Hi, I'm Bethany McHugh, and I'm with Grace Alice O'Shea today to talk about Sexual Health, West's new book, Sex Educated. Just a little introduction about Sex Educated. It's the first book of its kind in Ireland, and it gives young people support and answers in a sex positive and age appropriate way. And I thought that maybe today we could have a little talk about the book, Grace. Does that sound okay with you?
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. Tell us, what are your hopes with surrounding the publication of Sex Educated?
So my hopes really are that it reaches as many young people as possible and as many parents, teachers, anyone who has young people in their lives as possible. So the book is based on years of experience. So I've been a sex relationships educator for over 6 years now. And although I'm the author of the book, there's contributions from 5 other educators who have, years of experience as well. So, what we did was we compiled almost like a kind of a little database of all the questions we've gotten asked, all the different themes, topics, the most common, the funny ones, the sad ones, the complicated ones, and divided them up so that they would be answered in a very kind of readable, accessible, sex positive, educational way. So the hope with this book was always that it would be like a one-stop shop resource for either a parent who, is trying to prepare for talking to their kids about sex, or even a teacher who's gotten questions about something that they're not quite sure about and doesn't know where to start, or for a young person themselves to just sit down and take what they need from it and maybe leave the rest for later. It is very comprehensive. So in my head, I never had this idea that, you have to sit down and read it front to back. Now, I know I would have as a teenager, but I was a little bookworm, so everyone's different. But there's a lot in it. So it's really just about empowering and equipping young people with factual information about sex, about their bodies, about relationships, about everything from periods to pornography to consent, like you name it, it's there. So my hope would be that it would be a really supportive, even comforting resource to young people and to parents, and give them a starting off point for having those conversations and for just for having that learning, really.
Yeah, when I was reading Sex Educated, and I'm English, so brought up with the English school system, but
yeah,
how informative it is. Like, I wish as a young person that I had something like this, because all the questions are asked, all of the questions that you feel like you can't ask, or that seem a little bit, and everything becomes scary, whereas this makes it very comforting and very easy, and
Yeah, that's what I wanted. Like, I remember saying at one point that I wanted this book to feel like it was giving you a hug,
yeah.
that it was actually not just giving you all this information, it was actually demystifying stuff around sex that our society has kind of put this cloak of shame and secrecy over, and just really breaking it down, and that it's okay, a lot of this actually isn't that scary at all. And I can guarantee no matter what you're going through and no matter what you're worried about, it's probably normal. And I think that's the message throughout the book, is that you're okay, you're normal, you're not broken, you're doing just fine. And that's for parents as well, because, a lot of parents didn't get this education. I mean, again, what's in this book, if you were to sit down and teach it in a classroom, it would take probably weeks to cover it all. So it really is comprehensive. And yeah, as you said, like it's kind of what I needed when I was younger. And that saying, be the person you needed when you were younger, that's something I really like that saying. I think it's really important. And that's what I wanted to produce, something that answered all those questions. The ones you're afraid to ask, as you said, the ones there's shame around, even the funny ones, even the silly ones that you're afraid, oh, this is a stupid question. There's no such thing.
Yeah.
There really isn't. So yeah, that's the vibe we were going for. So I'm glad you feel we've hit it.
Yeah. Oh, you definitely have. You definitely have. I was reading it. I was like, I wish I had this when I was younger. It would have
Or
made things.
even, yeah, even in my early 20s, I could
Yeah.
have done with it, to be honest. Even like if I wasn't a sex
Yeah.
educator, I think even at 29, I could be reading it,
And things.
it's, yeah.
Yeah. It's you. You know. Well, I know there was certain stuff in the book as well. I was like, oh gosh, you know,
Yeah.
not knowing certain stuff. So, but yeah, it completely dissolves all of these walls that you kind of, you know, like you said, around shame, or if there's a bit of embarrassment or worry about saying something, it just dissolves all of the walls and just says, you're okay, everything's fine, which I absolutely love. It's absolutely amazing. And isn't it amazing that the president of Ireland has noticed how valuable this book is, you know? And how does that feel for you and your team to actually have this message?
I mean, yeah, it's great for Sexual Health West. Like President Michael D. Higgins has always been a great supporter of Sexual Health West and the work, and I think very progressive and forward thinking and very invested and interested in the health of young people. And this is part of the health of young people. It's great. Oh my God, it's so good to have kind of his backing, his words of support. And, because I can understand totally that there is a hesitancy among some adults to address different topics related to sex with young people. Like they worry, is it too much? Or, will I say the wrong thing? Or will I encourage them to just go out and do all this stuff? And like, that's not the case at all. Ignoring sexual health it does such an injustice to young people. So I think having a message from someone like the president really just hammers home that this is important work. This is the importance of normalizing it, that, why can we talk so much about mental health and physical health and not talk about sexual health? Like they're actually inseparable. And your teen years is, you mightn't be having sex at all. I mean, that's fine. Most teenagers aren't, but it's when you're developing as a sexual being and growing as a sexual being, and you're going to bring a lot of that into your adulthood. So again, a message from someone like the president really just cements how vital sexual health promotion really, really is. Because I do think sometimes it is overlooked and it's seen as a tick the box, and you get in someone for a day to do a talk with the young people, which, look, that's great to do that, but so much more is needed. So as you said, and as it says in the back of the book, this is the first of its kind book-wise in Ireland. So, it's certainly within the Irish context, I feel it's quite radical in a way. It is breaking a few boundaries and barriers. So yeah, it's just phenomenal to have the support of such a prominent and like a trustworthy figure as well,
Yeah, and I think, having that completely shows how valuable this book is, and like you said about young people not being taught about it. It's your body is going through it, so if you're not being taught about puberty or anything like that, or these feelings or the fears, it's scary, but you can't escape what's happening, can you? Because it's just it's happening to you. So it's so going back to the whole talking about it's the first kind of its book in Ireland. How does it feel for you and your team to have written something so positive and, so valuable, and to tell everybody out there who's watching this, why, just to hammer home, why is this book so valuable?
Yeah, it's valuable because it gives the information in such a way, I believe, that is very readable and very accessible, and it cuts through all the nonsense and all the misinformation and all the kind of societal conditioning we have around gender, around sex, around our bodies and how they should look and how we should act. Because, we live in the age of information. We have like we have Google, we can search the whole web for and come up with like millions and millions and millions of results, you know, if you type in sex or, you know, any of the topics in the book. So I know that particularly with adults who have young people in their lives, they want a reliable source of information. They just want something that's, you know, written by professionals, written by experts, written in a way that's not going to do any harm, that's really thought through, you know, that is positive, because that's the whole thing as well. This should be positive when we're talking about sex. And we have such a history of shame and negativity and secrecy around sex. And we see the harm that has done, and it still, you know, exists to this day. And, you know, it's kind of like teaching a young person how to drive, but all you're teaching them about is how not to have a crash. That's not how you teach someone to drive, right? You teach them all the other skills, give them all the information they need. And like sex is no different. And I think, again, I think we underestimate, because young people have, you know, so much access to the internet. I know when I started out this work, I was thinking, sure, they're going to know all this. Like, you know, kids these days, they're so much more grown up, they're so much more mature, and they've way more information. And I really quickly learned that is not the case. They might have access to loads of information. A lot of that information is terrible. And, you know, the same myths, there were myths that I believed at 17. I'm now 29. I'm still getting asked about the same ones, you know, years later. So again, the importance of a resource like this, to just have information that is factual, evidence-based, but also to provide a kind of warmth and kindness and comfort. And that balance is very delicate. And I think sometimes people make the mistake of thinking sex education is all about just, you know, labeling diagrams and listing out the body parts and talking about like wet dreams and how babies are made. That makes up like a tiny bit of sex education. Like really, really gold standard sex education is rooted, you know, in empathy, in respect, acceptance, inclusivity, all those things. So it's hard to find a resource that brings kind of the facts, but also the emotional intelligence into it. So, you know, I feel that is what we certainly have tried to create. And it's, you know, it's quite big. Like you can see, it's quite a, oh, you can't see it with the background, but it's quite a meaty book.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just think it's really valuable, and I think it might be eye-opening for some people as well, just to kind of realize what young people are asking, and realize that if they're asking these questions, we need to answer them. If you shut down questions, and this can be totally unintentional, with the best intentions, you know, but if you shut down a question, it immediately sends a message of there's something wrong with the question, you shouldn't be asking it. And it kind of contributes again to those undercurrents of shame. And they'll go off and they'll Google it, and they will probably, you know, come across stuff that isn't factual, isn't helpful, maybe even distressing. It depends on what they're Googling. So again, this book leaves, I feel, very few stones unturned. You know, we really try and tackle the difficult topics as well as the lovely, fabulous, pleasurable stuff. So yeah, it's hard to sum it up, and I'm very biased, but I do think it's very, very, very valuable. We have had, and again, as like, this is what we do all the time. Now I'm no longer with Sexuality West, but I'm still a sex educator, and I did 6 years of work with them, which was amazing. And they're still continuing to deliver brilliant sex education. But we saw over the years, over and over again, parents and teachers, do you have any resources you could recommend? Do you have any Irish resources you could recommend? And there's very, very, very few, and nothing like this. So it's great now that we'll be able to say, yeah, here it is. This is basically kind of decades of work rolled into a book.
Yeah. It's absolutely amazing, you know, and just reading it, it is everything, you know, like you said, it's everything, and with the whole factual element of it, but the comfort as well. It's you've reached that balance. You have reached that balance because, and I love that saying that you said about it's like a warm hug, because that's how it was. That's how it was when reading it. It was lovely. So going back to actually parents coming to you and asking if there's any sources, what would you say to those parents who might be a little bit on the fence about buying them a source, a text about sex education, and you know, what would you say to them in the sense of why is it important, like, you know, why is it important to buy Sex Educated for their own child's development?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I hear the hesitancy and I understand it. I really do. Like, I'm not a parent myself, but I have always have the best interests of young people at heart through my work and through the writing. And I mean, there's a few points. One is buy it yourself and read it yourself first, you know, like you don't have to just buy it and kind of hand it over to your young person. You can do that if you like, but you know, if you are hesitant, you might want to have a look at it yourself. You can even use it yourself and just use it as a way to kind of inform yourself and start conversations and just know kind of maybe a general overview of a topic and points that you think are important. Because, you know, this resource is for you, not just the young people. But also, again, you know, we're trying to break a cycle in Ireland around the dismal state of sex education and sexual health in Ireland, which has, you know, been around for a long time. And when I say sexual health, I'm not talking about STIs. That's only one part of sexual health. I'm talking about all the stuff we read in the media about consent, about sending, you know, nudes or naked pictures, about pornography, contraception use, alcohol use, all this stuff. That's all included in sexual health. And I suppose, you know, it can be very difficult for a parent to, or, you know, anyone with young people in their lives to kind of think of them as sexual beings, because, you know, we think of them as you know, they're children. But sexuality among adolescents is nothing to be afraid of. It's nothing that needs to be reined in and controlled. They need support and empathy and information. And any of the research will show that young people want this. They actually want this. They ask for this stuff. Even the book itself, in a way, is a form of kind of informal research in that these are the questions that were asked. I mean, this book was compiled from thousands of questions from thousands of young people, quite literally. So this is what young people are asking. Again, if we don't answer, they will just find out another way. And is it not so much better to have the information coming from a resource like this than from their peers? Because I know the stuff my peers in school used to say, and it built up really negative ideas actually around sex and very inaccurate information. So rather than their peers, or possibly, again, you know, the internet or porn, etc. So I think it's just viewing it as a tool to help you rather than something that's rather than it's let's say something that's telling you what to do. This book isn't telling you what to do. It's not saying you need to discuss everything or, you know, hit every point. It's, you can get from it, you know, you can take from it what you get from it, you know, as much as you want or as little as you want. I would also say that, you know, research does show that when young people have more comprehensive sex education, and this is a form of sex education, they are actually more likely to wait a bit longer to have sex. They're more likely to use contraception. They're more likely to have a better understanding of consent. You name it. There's so many positive, you know, teenage pregnancy rates are lower, STI rates, etc. And the research shows that in countries that have more comprehensive sex education from a young age. And just another thing as well is that I have found this, and this can be backed up as well. Young people get bored quite easily, and that's a good thing. They will not soak in every single word. If they read about something that they're not ready for, they'll come back to it another time, especially the way this book is written, because this book isn't like, oh, go out and do this sexual act. It's not at all. It's saying, okay, this is what the sexual act is. This is what you need to think about. This is how you can protect yourself. And you never have to do it if you don't want to. So, it's not going to encourage your young people to go out and have sex. It really isn't. It's just going to encourage them to make more informed decisions that best serve themselves. So I see the hesitancy. I understand it, but I would try and sit with it and kind of see what is the fear here. And more often than not, it's a valid fear, but it doesn't actually come to fruition from talking about sex in this way.
Yeah. And, like you said, the book itself, it can, with how it's laid out and how it's, the paragraphs are mentioned and all the rest of it, it can be just kept on a bookshelf and can be picked up again, skim through, okay, put it back.
Absolutely.
It's so easy, isn't it, just to, it's the way that it's formatted and the way that it's written and how it looks. It's just so easy to actually read, and I think it's just perfect. It's perfect for, parents and younger people, just to be able to, like you said, if a parent's got a question, I've been asked a question, and just have a quick glance and have a look.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like it's a starting point, and it's as you said, it can be kept on a shelf, it can be thrown under a bed or whatever, and it's still going to be there, because a lot of the information in this will stand the test of time. I tried to write it in that way so that, if you pick it up in 7-8 years time, the bones of it is still going to be spot on. Like there might be some advancements in research or different things like that, different products available, like you don't really know what's going to happen. But again, the basis of good sex education is about empathy and kindness and all those really important things that really get left out of sex education. And there's also amazing illustrations. And that was Ciara Coogan, fabulous Galway illustrator. And like we were just discussing, like we worked obviously so closely together throughout making this book, and Ciara was absolutely amazing. But like there was for example, when I wanted doing any of the anatomy images, I was like, okay, we need labia that looks different. We need vulvas that look different. We need penises that, the wide variation of how they can look. We need to see the full clitoris inside a diagram and see how, it actually hugs the vaginal passage and all that stuff. You never see that in biology books. It's actually even sometimes hard to find examples online of diagrams that actually include that kind of pleasure anatomy as well. So even that in Ireland, to be making a book with these kind of illustrations is quite radical. Like they're not graphic. They're just, most of them, again, relating to the anatomy, they're just factual. It's just we're not used to seeing, say, the clitoris labeled in a diagram. I'm like, why have we just left out this incredibly important part of anatomy? And again, it all comes back to shame and sex is something that, I always remember that and I think I mentioned this in the book somewhere, that my mom, was told when she was a teenager, not by, it was by whoever was her teacher, that if you enjoy it, it's a sin. And, you've seen that attitude seep in, although, it's certainly come a long way. But like, I just found it so eye-opening that even finding illustrations with, say, pleasure anatomy accurately labeled was really hard.
Yeah.
Or, someone using a dental dam or something like that. It was really hard to find examples. So Ciara did a spectacular job at, creating some of them just from scratch.
Yeah. The illustrations are absolutely amazing. and even just like you said about how they all look different and all the rest of it, because most of the illustrations when you're doing sexual health classes or anything like that, they all kind of look the same, and that can bring for a lot of people with if theirs doesn't look like this, what does this mean for me? And so it's having these illustrations and showing that they're all different, and showing, it's absolutely amazing, and the illustrations they're so cool.
They're gorgeous, and they're so inclusive as well. We wanted people, with even visible disabilities, being intimate or being involved, because again, as you mentioned, like a lot of the diagrams and the diagrams in the biology books, and then you have your kind of representations in the media, they can all look very, people with seemingly no disabilities or illnesses or anything like that, and usually white, usually thin, a lot of heterosexual couples. So we see loads and loads of that, and like that's fine, those people obviously deserve to be represented too, but I mean, it leaves out so many people. So we really wanted this book to be inclusive, and like I think throughout, to be fair, we've really made a really strong effort to do that, and include all kinds of like structures of relationships and sexuality, rather than just talk about boys and girls, because that it just simplifies it way too much. Now I know at a certain age it depends what way you're talking to your child, and you might need to simplify it a bit, but again, going back to children, if they get confused, sometimes they just like okay, I just can't be bothered with this is too confusing, and they'll come back to it another time. But also that they're a lot, I think they're a lot more clued in sometimes than we give them credit for, because with Sexuality West, they also offer a primary school program, which is it is separate to this, obviously, but like even in primary school, from my experience, they're so knowledgeable about things like gender and sexuality, and the way you can love different people, and it's just beautiful to see that. And even again, from a young age these days, young people do seem to have more of an awareness, so it's really important that like resources reflect that inclusivity.
100%. And like, this, I know you get a different educational system, but I know that when we were taught, and I'm not sure if it's the same in Ireland, but it was that, you just saw the heterosexual couples. You didn't learn anything about, the LGBT plus, community, or, other genders or anything like that. And it was just, this is how you do it. This is how a baby's born. This is it. And to have, resources where, because I feel like when you're being taught something like that at school, it almost says this is the norm and everything outside of this is not the norm, whereas it is, it's all a part of it. It's all, it's all, it kind of just kicks everything out, doesn't it? And makes everything, but yeah, you completely did that in Sex Educated, that it was just, everything's just so inclusive and comforting and just really valuable and lovely.
I'm glad to hear that, because we're in our sex educator bubble sometimes, where we're, this is our full-time job. We're so used to talking and reading and, about all these things. So, but, the people I have been showing in my life so far have been coming back with the same things. And like, there's people in my life who are like, in their, 30s, 40s and much older, who are learning stuff. I learned stuff writing this book. I genuinely learned so much. And I had a good level of knowledge going into it. So, it's brilliant. Like, there's always more to learn. And that's another thing I meant to mention earlier, and I want to mention now, that learning about sexuality and learning about your sexuality, it's literally a lifelong process. There's not like a destination point that you've it all figured out. Something this fluid and this complex cannot just be figured out. And I don't mean that in like the people you're attracted to. That's only one part of sexuality. I actually just mean in general, like, you know, the way you've developed as a sexual being. I'm training at the moment to be a sex relationships coach, and the amount I'm learning, and again, I'm coming from being in this field and being very sex positive, and even the learning in the course I'm doing now is really pushing me and challenging me and getting me to think about, oh yeah, I actually did take in that message when I was younger about X, Y, and Z, and that actually has affected me. And that's okay. And, you know, a lot of parents who buy this, or teachers or youth workers or aunties, uncles, etc., every single person has their own unique kind of sexuality blueprint as such. They have their own unique way that the sexual part of themselves has developed. And they, again, a lot of us haven't had a resource like this or access to comprehensive sex positive sex education. So it's really hard then to expect to teach what you haven't been taught, you know? So, you know, even just, I would love for adults to be open-minded in approaching this resource and actually thinking, what can I learn? What can I get from this? Especially as parents, because we learn so much, even subconsciously, from our parents. And that's not to put pressure on parents. They're already under enough pressure and you're doing a great job. And I know, you know, parents only want the best and they want to get everything perfect. But, you know, you never will. You're never going to get everything perfect. And that's fine. And again, I think that's a common theme in this book, that it's not about getting it perfect or, you know, doing everything as it should be done. I hate that word, should. Even though I've probably used it in some contexts, but, you know, we tackle a lot of shoulds in this book, that, you know, to be gentle with yourself, because you might be in your 40s, 50s, but you're still a developing sexual being. You're just not maybe as at a really pivotal, delicate point as a teenager in that development, but you're still developing as a sexual being. So, you know, we're kind of all in the same boat, but at different points of the journey. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, no, completely. That's a really nice saying, actually. You know, all in the same boat, but just in different parts. Yeah, and do you know, I love how it's just sort of like you said about, oh, you should, and this is how it should be, and all the rest of it. But just breaking all of that down and just saying, you know, it's okay. You know, things are going to be like this, and that's all people want, because it's okay. Everything's okay around it. So, yeah,
It is okay.
It is okay. And
I think I've said that, written that sentence like hundreds of times. Yeah. It's okay if this, it's okay if that. And because genuinely we mean it, like, you know, it is okay. And it's trial and error. Humans are messy, you know, we're messy beings. And we're never not going to be messy. We're very complex. So, and as I said, you know, your unique blueprint and how that gets projected onto other people and young people, and oh yeah, there's just so much to it. So it's really kind of about just being kind to yourself, whether you are a young person or a parent or whoever reading this book, that really just read it without the pressure that I should know this, or, oh my God, how did I not know this? That's fine. Why would you know it? Again, we don't have a history in Ireland of talking about this stuff in a manner in which it should be talked about. So yeah, so I hope this is, again, that kind of comfort and that pat in the back, or that, you know, reassuring hug that it's okay. You'll figure it out. You absolutely will.
It's definitely there. You know, it is definitely there, and the empathy throughout the whole of this book, it's lovely, you know, and it's the way that sex education should be. It should be like this, you know, and it should be just, it's fine, it's okay. And so, you know, I really, here at Tribes Press, we really recommend Sex Educated. You know, it's such an informative and non-judgmental book that is written in such a caring manner that it will just, like you said, help people of all ages, all on their journey. It will help everybody, whatever part of their journey they're on. So thank you so much, Grace, for talking with me today. It was absolutely lovely speaking with you, and it's been a really lovely chat.
Yeah, and thank you so much. Thanks for asking such good questions as well, because it's really getting me, you know, like I've been talking about this book for years really, but in a more private sense. So, you know, speaking about it publicly is such an honor and such an excitement. So you know, it's great to be actually able to finally share it with the world. And
You should
I
be
hope
proud. You should be
thank
proud of
you.
it. It's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I am. You know, I think I'm a bit of a perfectionist. So like during the process, I couldn't sit back and just look at it and be like, oh God, yeah, it's amazing. I couldn't until it was done. And then I could look at it and be like, oh wow, we did this. This is brilliant. We actually did it. Because again, it's quite literally decades of experience poured into, you know, what is it, 400 and something pages. So I am really proud of it, and I hope, you know, the sexuality field or people in Ireland can be proud of it as well, that, you know, we are taking strides in this direction. And I hope it travels outside Ireland. I really hope, you know, it's written actually in such a way that there's some Irishisms in it, but actually a lot of it is you could apply it to any well, not any, but many different countries and cultures.
Yeah, completely.
So yeah, no, I'm really excited to see it go out into the world. So
you should be.
much.
You should be. It's absolutely amazing. I really highly recommend this book. You know, really highly recommend it.
Thank you. Great. Good.
So it was absolutely lovely speaking with you, and I hope everyone who's watching this, please buy this book for either yourself or the young people in your life, because it is just so positive and just, I think it's just so valuable, you know, for anyone's development. So thank you very much. And
Thanks,
it was lovely speaking to you. Okay.
Yes, thanks, Bethany. You too.
Okay.